The Ambitious Africans podcast is building more than conversations. We're building a thinking community. If you're navigating a challenge, transition, or decision in your personal or professional journey, we invite you to share it with us using the link below. Selected reflections will be discussed in future episodes where other listeners will offer their perspective, insights, and lived experiences. This is not about having it all figured out. It's about learning out loud, hearing different viewpoints, and lightening the mental load by thinking together. Your submission can be anonymous, and the goal is perspective, not judgment. Go into the show notes below, fill out the form, and share your challenges, ideas, thoughts, and decision points with us, and we'll be more than happy to give you some directions. Dear ambitious African, this is your host, Secho. In this podcast, we'll discuss everything about our journeys and experiences towards achieving our goals for life and work as phenomenal change leaders in our varied communities. We'll feature other ambitious Africans crushing it through arts, social activism, tech innovations, entrepreneurship, and positive lifestyle and holistic well-being. We are the generation that is redefining Africa as we know it, and as an ambitious African, now is the time to get involved. Give us your feedback and ideas for our next podcast, and let's keep the conversations going. See you inside. Hello. I hope you have an amazing day. You're having an amazing day, depending on when you're listening to this. But welcome to another episode. This is your host, Secho, and this is the Ambitious Africans podcast. I am excited to welcome you to another episode. I'm really loving these episodes, and I'm so glad you get to, you decide to spend these moments with me. Again, I hope your day has been good. In today's episode, I want to read out something I wrote a couple of months ago, specifically in August 2025. On the day of recording, we're in 2026. So, depending on when you're listening to this, this was written a couple of months ago. Now, a bit of context. So, I'd had a conversation with a friend who was telling me about his investment plans. He and his brother were investing in buying some properties, and I was asking them, you guys are like literally the last two kids in the house of your parents, so why are you guys like moving out? And their house is huge. Seriously, it's almost a mansion in my opinion. And then he's telling me, they want to build legacy and things like that, and that inspired me to write this thing that I'm about to read to you. And it's my thoughts around what it means to really build legacy, but what it really means to build generational wealth, especially as first generation, second generation young people or children of parents who've put in the work to achieve certain things before our being birthed, right? So now I'll start reading. As a generation, we are growing up with parents who worked so hard to get us to this point. But I feel like there's a trend emerging, one that if we are not careful could derail our progress in breaking generational curses and truly building generational wealth. Here's what I mean. The narrative around being the firstborn or the first in the family to achieve something is powerful. The ego boost from these stories can be motivating, but they also keep us stuck. Instead of recognizing when it's time to build beyond them, we end up feeding into a cycle where each generation keeps striving to be the first rather than consolidating and expanding on the gains of those before us. Think about it. How is it possible that after centuries, generation after generation, no one before us tried to change things? The truth is, you're not the first person in your lineage to try and build something. Just by standing where you are already benefiting from blessings, efforts, and sacrifices you may not even be aware of. But because we've internalized the idea that we have to start from scratch every time in order to claim success, we end up undermining the progress already made by generations before us. A friend of mine recently told me that he and his younger brother had pooled a huge amount of money to buy land in Ghana. I asked him, why do you feel the need to buy land when your father already owns a beautiful house in a prime area? His response was eye-opening. He admitted that his father had asked the same question. Why did I build this massive house if all my children are just going to leave? And that's when it clicked. His father spent his whole life building something substantial for his family, yet instead of using it as a foundation, his children were set on starting all over. Now, I'm not saying people shouldn't buy property or invest in new things, but I do think we need to question the mindsets behind these decisions. Are we truly building, or are we just repeating the cycle of starting over? The most important thing our generation can do is expand on what has already been established, rather than chasing the empty validation of being the first. And this isn't just about personal wealth. It's the same with businesses in most African countries. Family businesses die because young people don't see them as something worth expanding. Instead, they believe success only comes from starting from scratch. We've glorified the struggle so much that we are letting valuable legacies die rather than growing them. It's time to shift the narrative. Instead of celebrating being the first, let's be the generation that consolidates and expands. That's how we truly build wealth and lasting impact. The end. Now, I believe the piece speaks for itself. And I want you to also start thinking about, what does this really look like in your own scenario? Are you the one who is thinking that you're having to start from scratch because your parents didn't build certain foundations for you? Or are you really just somebody who's ignoring some of the things they did you didn't have to do? There's this example I often give. The fact that I grew up in a slum doesn't mean I'm starting from scratch per se. It means that my parents lived in an area that wasn't a slum, that was far from the slum. Because to them, before they moved to wherever we were, it wasn't a slum, but it was their first entry into the city. And so it was their definition of living in the city, yes? Which means they didn't grow up in the city, technically. And so I didn't have to grow up outside of the city, which means they built that foundation. I have access to certain things people from rural areas do not have. And it goes on and on that way. There's this African or Ghanaian proverb that says, no matter how far your house is, there's still a house behind yours, which means no matter how, what's the word? No matter how dire you think your situation is, there's somebody's version which is much worse than yours, which is much dire than yours. Not to say that those people shouldn't want better things or you should feel grateful for basic things. I'm just saying that live in a state where you recognize and take stock of what has been done for you so you can build on it, instead of neglecting and perhaps ignoring them only because you think it's not up to anything worth your time. Now, today's episode has been just a way to get you to think. But I also want you to reflect on what some of the things that your parents have done for you. It might be the fact that they moved to a different location. It might be that they took you to school. It might be that they bought or invested in property or invested in certain things that you get to take advantage of. They didn't do these things with you in mind, only for you to come and throw them aside and not take any stock of them and not take any appreciation to them and not build on them. because chances are it's going to happen to you when you have kids, or if you have kids and want to build legacy through them. Would you be excited to know that all this work you're doing, all this planning you're making, all these investments and stocks you're buying, your kids are going to look at them and be like, you know, I really struggled from scratch. I started from the bottom. When they get a chance to speak on the stage or somewhere, like, you imagine how that would feel. It's like you do all these things for your kids, only for them to sit on a podium or on a panel somewhere, like share their grass to grace story, and you're like, dude, no, that's not what was your case. But that's what happens when we easily ignore what has been done for us, no matter how small. I think this gives you some good things or good material to think about. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.